Hello, my name is Anirban Basu. I am an economist. Please hold any further applause. And on the morning of Tuesday, December 5th, I'll be presenting about the economy, where we are in the business cycle, what it means for real estate and construction. Higher interest rates, of course, are one of the factors, but we'll talk about the labor market. We'll talk about materials costs. We'll talk about all manner of things that impact real estate and construction, office vacancy, so on and so forth, and what the outlook might be for 2024. So please join me on the morning of December 5th. We can talk about the economy, and I look forward to addressing your questions. With respect to the current state of inflation, inflation remains above the Federal Reserve's 2% mandate. So if you look at the consumer price index data over the past year, overall inflation running at 3.7%. Now that's partial victory, because back in June of 2022, overall inflation is running above 9% a year. Now we're down to less than 4%. If you strip out food and energy prices, the inflation rate is 4.1%, the so-called core rate of inflation. But the way I look at it is the Federal Reserve isn't there yet. It's not back to its 2% inflation target. And my very strong belief is that the work that has to be done to get from 4% to 2% is actually harder than getting from 9% to 4%, with what we've seen over the last 18 or 19 months. So almost every pundit will tell you rates are going to stay higher for longer. There's a big debate about whether or not they're going to raise rates on November 1st or their December meeting, but the Federal Reserve's war on excess inflation is not yet done. And that's one of the reasons I think that the economic momentum that we currently experience, and there's a lot of momentum, by the way, is still jeopardized. And that'll show up at some point in the next 12 months. All right, with respect to worker attitudes, they've changed. Generations are different. We have lost a lot of our finest construction workers to retirement, namely those baby boomers who retired in such large numbers during the pandemic and continued to. These are people who brought their A games to the job site each and every day, learn their love of work with hands, minds, and equipment simultaneously early in life, have therefore been refining their skills for decades. They often learn that love, by the way, in shop class in high school. Shop class typically taught by someone with enormous arms, running a rush teacher and driving a Trans Am. That kind of person has been weeded out of the curriculum. Today, it's about teaching to the test. A lot of young people are not even aware that the skilled trades offer a pathway to prosperity. And so you look at cultural attitudes, for instance, the emphasis on four-year college degrees, for instance, relative to previous decades. And you can understand why so many young people don't even consider construction as an avocation. So that's where we are right now. Those attitudes have changed. It means that contractors are having a tougher time finding workers, holding on to workers, and of course, affording workers. Let me give you an example of what's happening. As of this moment, we have a UAW strike, we have an actor strike, but one strike that did not occur, involved the negotiations between UPS and the Teamsters Union. That was a 5-year contract. During the 5th year of that contract, the average full-time UPS truck driver will earn $170,000 per year. Now, that's wages plus benefits, and benefits are substantial, but it's a lot of compensation, forcing people like myself to ask the question, how do I look in brown? And as it turns out, based on the app, quite spectacular. But setting that aside, construction workers can do a lot of those things. They can drive, they can park, they can lift heavy objects, whether it's including 70-pound packages, and they can pass a drug test in many cases. Most Americans can't do that, but most construction workers can. And so there's a lot of tension there, a lot of upward pull on compensation, which is going to keep construction cost delivery charges quite high going forward. So with respect to business confidence, let's say a CEO conference or CFO conference or Chief Operating Officer conference, we've seen some mixed results. So for instance, if one looks at the National Federation of Independent Businesses Index of Small Business Optimism, Small Business America, not optimistic. During the most recent months where you have data, only 5% of small businesses said that it was a good time to expand their business. That was akin to what we saw back in 2008, 2009. However, in the construction world, it is different. Why is that? Because the average American contractor has plentiful backlog, meaning work that is under contract yet to be performed. So they have some visibility that many other business operators don't have. We have a survey that we do every month for associate builders and contractors. I serve as a chief economist. And we ask them, what is their outlook for sales? They expect that sales will grow in the next 6 months. What's your expectation for employment? We expect to hire more people in the next 6 months. What's your expectation for profit margins? We expect our margins to go up even further, which is more amazing. Because when you talk about equipment shortages, higher equipment prices, material price inflation, and of course, a lack of workers, and workers becoming more expensive, one might think, my goodness, given high interest rates, margins are going to become smaller. I'm not going to be able to charge enough to offset all these cost increases, including project financing cost increases. And yet, the average contractor surveyed by us at Associate Builders and Contractors is saying, no, we have enough pricing power that we can still push margins higher. That's remarkable. And again, it tells us about the strength of the U.S. economy, in particular, the strength of the U.S. construction industry. Still lots of momentum there, driven by a handful of segments, perhaps, not every segment, but still overall quite strong. With respect to indicators I look at for business confidence, I look at all kinds of things. But one of them is the Conference Board's Index of Leading Economic Indicators. It's a group of 10 leading indicators in their own right, all bundled into one composite index. And that index predicted the 2001 recession. It predicted the 07, 08, 09 economic downturn. That is not telling us something more wicked this way comes, that this economy is going to get weaker. Again, monetary policy operates with long and variable lags. I believe that the economy is performing well right now for a number of reasons, but one of them is improving supply chains. Because here's what happens when supply chains improve. When supply chains improve in the context of unmet demand. So let's take new cars as an example. So for a long time there, we couldn't find new cars on dealership lots. What did we do? We bought used cars. What happened to the price of used cars? They took off. But as new cars started to hit the dealership lots, there was this frenzied demand for them. What you see is an abundance of transactional volume. That's economic growth. But also, with less scarcity, you see prices start to come down, or at least not rise so quickly. So you get both economic growth and less inflation as supply chains improve. That's what we've seen. I believe that the impact of these higher interest rates is yet to really fully impact the economy. You can point to episodes, the failures of Silicon Valley Bank on March 10th, Signature Bank on March 12th, that kind of thing, clearly had something to do with interest rate increases. However, for the most part, I think the economy has been relatively unaffected by these interest rate increases. Notice consumers are still spending, doing things like buying Taylor Swift concert tickets. Those are very expensive. And we saw gun retail sales recently for September. They were fabulous. So the consumer is still spending. Interest rate increases don't seem to have slowed the economy much at all, but I think the slowdown is coming. And so that's, in my mind, the leading indicator. There's an inverted yield curve. So that means, for instance, that short-term interest rates are higher than long-term bond interest rates, inverted yield curve. We saw inverted yield curves before the 1970 recession, before 73, 74, 75, before the 1980 recession, before 81, 82, before 1990, 1991, before 2001, before 07, 08, 09. Not so much before 2020, that was caused by something else. But now we have pretty massive inversion of the yield curve, and it's been nearly a flawless predictor of recession for decades. So I think recession is coming. And of course, I'm a pessimist, as it turns out. I'm a Baltimore Orioles fan, and I had no girlfriends in high school or college. But nonetheless, that's what the leading indicators are telling me. 2023 has been shockingly strong for the U.S. economy, and right now we are poised to enter 2024 with a lot of momentum.